How are we doing, everyone? We've got less than a month to go in the regular season. The playoffs are quickly approaching, and I cannot wait to see my Bulls in action in the postseason. Yes, guys, they're still going to make it to the playoffs despite their recent play. I don't want to hear in the comments that the Bulls might not make the playoffs, but anyway, we have also made it to another Wednesday, and you know on this channel every week I do a series rotating between your Bulls hot takes and your would you rather scenarios to get you guys involved in interacting with the channel. So if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already if you like the content. Second, feel free to leave your takes below to be featured in next week's video, which will be on your Bulls hot takes. But with all that being said, let's get into these, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first one comes to us from Jarrell Martin. Would you rather have Derrick Jones Jr. or Matisse Theible? This is an interesting one. I mean, I personally would take Theible because he's a bit younger, a better defender. He's generally speaking a more impactful player, although not the athletic high flyer like Derrick Jones Jr. is. And I really like Derrick Jones Jr. too. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, they're both the same age, so forget that I said that he was younger. I don't know. It's a close one, but I would prefer Theible because of his defensive intensity, and which is something the Bulls could certainly use right now. Next, we've got Dean Smith. Would you rather on the Bulls have Darius, Garland, or a player with Io's defense and Coby's offense? I mean, someone who has Io's defense and Coby's offense is a pretty damn good player, like as good as Darius Garland is, and I really like his game. Dude was an all-star this year, and he'll continue to get better for how young he is, but to have a two-way capability player of Io's defense and Coby's offense, that can't be underestimated. Next, we've got Malik JC. Would you rather have most improved player Jimmy Butler on the 2011 Bulls team or have MVP Rose on the 2015 Bulls team? Oh man, that's a good one because I often think about what the pre-injury Rose era Bulls would have been able to do had Jimmy Butler also been entering his prime. Like, that team would have been stacked when you add a guy like Jimmy who could guard LeBron James, combined with MVP Derrick Rose and his freak explosiveness and Noah's impact down low. So I guess I'm kind of answering the question as I'm talking about it. I would take most improved player Jimmy Butler on the 2011 Bulls, which I know some people would say, well, why would you not just take MVP Rose in 2015? Because then you would have prime Rose and prime Butler together. But by 2015, first of all, Noah and Dang were starting to fall off a bit. Yes, we added Pau Gasol, who was better than Carlos Boozer, but Boozer in 2011 was actually a solid player for the Bulls and the second leading scorer and rebounder on that team. And in general, the 2011 team was so good even without Jimmy Butler. When you had the depth the Bulls did with the bench mob, the hustle and defensive tenacity of that team, like if you add Jimmy Butler from his most improved season, in which he averaged 20 points per game, and by that time was really the Bulls' best player in my view. I know some people don't agree with that, but by that time he had passed Rose. Even when Rose came back from his injury, was still considered the face of the franchise. I personally thought that Jimmy Butler was the best player. So you add Jimmy to that 2011 team, I don't see how the Bulls don't win a championship that season. I think they would have been able to take out the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals with Butler locking up LeBron, and I think ultimately would have defeated the Mavericks in the finals as well. Next, we've got Red Firewolf 23. Would you rather see Alex Caruso with Defensive Player of the Year or Zach Lavine win MVP? This one is pretty easy for me, but I would much rather see Lavine win the MVP, even though I would love to see Caruso win Defensive Player of the Year, because generally speaking, the team must be playing very well for your best player to be winning MVP. And by Zach winning the MVP award, it would mean that Zach Lavine has truly reached his full potential as an NBA player, which I still believe he can with how gifted he is as an athlete, that he has the ability to be that type of caliber level of player. And so for Zach Lavine to win MVP means good things for the Bulls in terms of their overall performance and recognition, whereas Alex Caruso winning Defensive Player of the Year would be as well, but not at the same level as Zach winning the MVP. Next, we've got Dontavius Stapleton. Would you rather take the broadcasting duo of Neal Funk and Stacey King or Adam Amin and Stacey King? You know, it's funny because when I heard that Neal Funk was going to be retiring, I figured there wasn't going to be anyone who would be able to replace him. And part of it was the nostalgia factor for me because I grew up listening to Neal Funk all the way back in the 90s. And so to have him replaced, I didn't think that there was going to be anyone up to par with Neal Funk. But then they brought in Adam Amin, and how perfectly he fit with Stacey King, and the chemistry that they have as a duo is just so good, to the point where I actually like the dynamic between Stacey and Adam better than Neal Funk, because they joke and laugh a ton together. Adam is much more animated and passionate than Neal is, to where you feel like he's just as big of a fan as you are. So I love Neal Funk. I miss him on the broadcast, but I would take Stacey and Adam between these options. Next, we've got Joker. Would you rather have Anthony Edwards or Zach Lavine? Oh man, this question is actually harder than you think, and I'm sure I'm going to lose a couple of subs with my assessment on this one, and that's fine. But really the main thing you have to consider is the potential and what the ceiling is for each of these players. Anthony Edwards is only in his second season in the league. He's 20 years old, 7 years younger than Zach Lavine, and is averaging 21 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. And he's even upped his defensive game this season as well, which was a big knock on Edwards before he was just seen as sort of a high-volume scorer, very similar to the criticisms that Lavine used to receive. And for someone to be putting up these type of numbers being only 20 with so much room left to grow as a player is an intriguing option for sure. Now granted, I still think that Lavine, as they currently stand, is the better player between them, and the Bulls would not be as good if you simply replaced Lavine with Anthony Edwards on this roster. But at the same time, as it relates to Lavine's potential and ceiling, it's hard to envision Lavine having that much higher of a ceiling than what we're currently seeing today. Like, he's 27, and yes, there is still room for upside, but he's in his prime and likely close to his peak. Now, by me saying that doesn't mean that he's going to start declining next season. No, I think he's likely going to remain in the peak of his prime for a number of years, but saying that he still has a ton of room left to grow when he's already been in the league for 8 years is probably not that likely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but historically speaking, based on players' primes, it's unlikely. So that's something you have to consider. So what I'll say is this: if I'm looking for a win now piece, which the Bulls currently are for the most part, I'm taking Lavine because you want an established star that has experience and is in the peak of his prime. If you're looking more towards the future, I'm taking Anthony Edwards because of the sheer potential and growth still left from this kid. Next, we've got Lawrence Taylor. Lose DeMar in exchange for prime Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. Lawrence, my man, this one is pretty easy. Like, how are you not going to take prime Michael Jordan? You're talking about the greatest player of all time over Scottie Pippen and Phil. Like, yes, obviously Phil Jackson is a better coach than Billy Donovan, but when you have Michael Jordan, coaching at that point isn't as big of a factor. You have Michael Jordan, and look, Billy Donovan is a competent enough of a coach that I'm sure he could coach Michael Jordan, especially when he's coached top superstars in the league before. Scottie would be great on this team for sure. He would technically, quote unquote, fit better than Michael Jordan would with this Bulls team, given the fact that we have guys like DeRozan and Lavine who are also ball dominant players. Yeah, adding MJ probably wouldn't be the best fit, but again, this is still Michael Jordan we're talking about here. You would find a way to make it work. Next, we've got the Benny. Would you rather see Rodman or Noah's jersey retired by the Bulls? And is there any former Bulls players you think numbers should be retired? This one is easy for me. I would much rather see Noah's jersey retired. And it's really because of what Noah meant to the city of Chicago and the franchise. Don't get me wrong, Rodman was as well. And without him, it's possible the Bulls don't get that second three-peat. But jersey retirements are really based on how long a player played with a particular team, and if they played the best years with said team and how impactful they were to the organization. Noah played 9 seasons with the Bulls compared to Rodman's 3 seasons, was a 2-time All-Star, an All-NBA player, 3-time All-Defensive Team player, and a Defensive Player of the Year with the Bulls. Like, yeah, he is much more deserving of his jersey being retired than Dennis Rodman. Not saying Noah was a better player than Rodman in terms of their overall career, but in terms of his time with the Bulls and considering jersey retirements, yeah, that should be Noah, no question. As far as players who I think deserve to have their numbers retired, I mean, you have to keep in mind, in the Bulls' entire franchise history, they only have 4 numbers retired in the rafters. So they're pretty stringent on whose number is going up. But I think the most likely candidates are Noah and Rose, given their play during their tenure with the Bulls and what they meant to the city of Chicago. Next, we've got TJ Views. Would you rather have Draymond Green or prime Ben Wallace on this team? So just to be clear, this is Draymond Green as he is right now, since you didn't specify Draymond Green in his prime, not prime Draymond Green, because I consider Green to be past his prime, and prime Ben Wallace, the defensive beast and rebounding champion. Yeah, I'm taking Ben Wallace. Like, even though Draymond Green would be a perfect fit on this team with his defense and playmaking ability at the 4 spot, Ben Wallace was a monster and could help this team tremendously. If you said prime Draymond Green, I would maybe consider that over Ben Wallace. But even though Draymond has had a good season when he's healthy, again, why he's past his prime, he still isn't the player that he used to be back in the height of the Warriors dynasty. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it there for this week, guys. Thanks to all those who left their takes. Don't forget the Bulls will be taking on the Jazz tonight. Feel free to leave your hot takes in the comments below. And as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.